everyone. Welcome back to Ghostwood, the Twin Peaks podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Charles Skaggs, back in the Ghostwood forest. It's kind of quiet right now. Very, very cold and snowy here in the Ghostwood forest. But thankfully, I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, wonderful friend, and just someone I like to just kick back and talk about just about everything for about an hour or two before we even get started on these podcasts. Zan Sprouse. How you doing, Zan?
How you doing, Charles? I like to think that we're good enough friends that we would do this anyway.
I hope so.
And it's not just the pandemic and we're like, oh my God, someone to talk to. Hey, there's someone at the door. Like we're dogs that are just excited that the mailman's here, you know?
Yeah.
Like, ooh, look, people.
Well, can I tell you about my insecurity? My big fear is that the pandemic will, lessen. We'll start being more social. We'll get to go to things like movies and whatnot, and I'll never get to see you again. That you'll just vanish into the ether because you'll be so busy.
Do you remember the year before the pandemic? We literally went to the movies once a month.
Yeah, but that was a special thing with David Lynch.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
No, that's part of my fear too. Is that like.
So that's just maybe my own insecurity here, but.
Well, my insecurity is that I secretly kind of enjoy not having a lot of social obligations because social things make me incredibly anxious.
Right.
So I'm worried that because I'm out of practice with initiating things, that I'm going to be bad at again when it's time to start doing it again.
Right.
So here's what we can do, Charles. We can help each other with our insecurities and not let that kind of stuff happen.
I think that's a great idea.
That is my pledge to you.
Okay. Well, I will take the same pledge. So
if I had half of a heart that said best friends on it, I'd give it to you.
We'll just snap it in two and then I'll hand it to
you. But the 90s are over and you can't buy those at Claire's anymore.
And then I'll just bury it under a mound of dirt. Oh, wait, no, that's something else entirely. All right.
And then your psychologist will dig it up and he'll put it in a coconut.
Because he's kind of like creeping around the forest for no reason, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Because he's in love with your dead best friend and
it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing.
Then he's going to marry the gas station owner's crazy wife that sells curtains or some shit. I don't know.
Yeah. See, we got there. We got to Twin Peaks. So
Twin Peaks, man.
We got back on topic. So here at episode 92 of Ghostwood, we're going to be discussing Lost Highway. I'm a rolling stone, all lost and alone.
I'm deranged.
Yeah. Sorry, I got a little Hank Williams in there. Hank Williams Sr., the good one.
I got a little bit of little David Bowie in there.
Nice. Can't go wrong with David Bowie, especially on this podcast.
Hank Williams Sr., the good one. Does that mean, Charles, that you're not ready for some football? Is that what you're telling me?
Well, I watch football, but as far as anything Hank Williams Jr., not so much.
I just don't think you're ready for some football.
So, yeah, we're talking Lost Highway, the 1997 neo-noir film written by David Lynch and Barry Gifford, as in that Barry Gifford that, hey, we just talked about when we talked about Wild at Heart, right?
Didn't he write the Wild at Heart, The Adventures of Sailor and Lula?
Yeah, well, at least most of it until David Lynch turned the rest of it into a film.
Well,
yeah,
he wrote the crappy ending.
Yeah, he wrote the crappy ending that David Lynch made into an awesome ending, which we talked about. And this one was, of course, directed by David Lynch, produced by Mary Sweeney, Tom Sternberg, and Deepak Nayar.
Okay.
Now, this is the latest in our series of David Lynch films that we're talking about here, because, hey, it's David Lynch, right?
Yep.
And I'm really curious to get into this with you, because this is a very complex movie, needless to say.
This is a very complex movie, and I do want to say, Charles, that about 10 years after this movie was made,
right?
Producer Mary Sweeney and David Lynch got married.
Oh, okay.
And 10 months after that, they got divorced. They are better collaborators than they were spouses, apparently. But yes, Mary Sweeney and David Lynch were briefly married in the mid-2000s.
Well, if I recall correctly, isn't David Lynch on like wife number 4 by now?
He's on wife number 4.
Yeah. Okay. Just kind of wondering. I mean, maybe it's me, maybe I'm wacky, maybe I'm a little insane, but I'm still on wife 1. So,
well,
I guess goals, I don't know.
Well, sometimes people,
drift apart. I get that.
You get married when you're young and you have a baby from the radiator and you drift apart.
Right.
And then, things that Charles, maybe the art life isn't cut out for everyone.
Apparently not. No.
You know, so
Yeah, maybe I'm not. I need to be more of an artiste. Apparently.
well, if you want more wives, sure. I don't know anything about David Lynch's relationship history except for what went on with Isabella Rossellini because she has talked about it a little bit more than everybody else has.
Right.
But yeah, he's been married 4 times. Mary Sweeney, I forget the name of his current wife, but he was also married to Mary Fisk, who is Jack Fisk's sister.
Right.
So.
All right. Well, I didn't mean to spiral us down that particular rabbit hole, but
no, I just wanted to, like I said, there's some interesting trivia about this movie.
Okay.
And the people in it.
All right. So, cast in this one. This movie's kind of interesting because, we've been talking the past couple of films as we talked Dune and Wild at Heart about how I kind of break these down into Twin Peaks actors, actors that we've seen on both Twin Peaks and Twin Peaks The Return.
Right.
And David Lynch vets who turned up in other movies of his.
Right.
And other actors that he's never worked with before. So this one's really interesting because there's only like a very few Twin Peaks actors. There's like no Lynch vets.
Except for Jack Nance.
Except for, that's essentially Twin Peaks actor, right? Jack Nance.
Yeah.
And then there's most of the rest of this cast is essentially actors he's never worked with and never work with again in this one.
Well, little did we know that Balthazar Getty was going to be a Twin Peaks actor.
Right, exactly. So this is obviously before he made his debut. So now technically, obviously, we count Balthazar Getty as a Twin Peaks actor.
Right.
But Lost Highway came first. So it's a little reverse order, but which makes perfect sense for the film that we're talking about today.
Right.
It's all kind of circular, like a Mobius loop, if you will.
Oh, hey.
Hey. Yeah, Balthazar Getty plays Pete Dayton, famous, of course, for playing Red in Twin Peaks The Return. That magician guy that we were kind of wondering about that really shouldn't be with Shelley. And he's been in the movie Young Guns 2, Natural Born Killers, Judge Dredd. Mm-hmm. That's the Sylvester Stallone one. And I know him from the TV show Alias, which I know you haven't watched. But that show had a lot of cool actors on it.
Balthazar Getty is also of the famous Gettys. His great grandfather is J. Paul Getty.
Getty Images kind of Getty.
the billionaire, and it was his father, Balthazar Getty's father, was the one who was kidnapped and held for ransom by because Getty was such a ridiculous billionaire.
Right.
And J. Paul Getty said, I'm not going to pay for his return. I'm not going to pay this ransom because I have 12 grandkids. If I pay this ransom, I'm going to pay ransom on 12 kids. I'm not going to do that. So he almost didn't pay for it. But then you know what they got in the mail, Charles?
What?
His ear.
Ooh.
How David Lynch is that?
Seriously, right?
Yeah. It was.
Did he find it in a field?
It was sent by mail, and they
crawling
said,
with ants.
Well, it was there've been some movies and TV shows that have been based on the story. Paul Getty, who was an oil magnate, essentially.
Okay.
I
love that you know all this. This is great.
He was kind of a hard ass, and his grandson, Paul Getty III, was your basic rich kid, kind of no good, kind of not
spoiled.
Yes, very entitled, and he had talked a little bit about maybe kidnapping himself to try and make some money, but then they scrapped that plan. But somebody thought, if you don't want the money, we'll take it. So he got kidnapped, and that was part of why his grandfather didn't want to pay, was because there was also part of him that thought, this kid kidnapped himself. I'm not just going to pay him ransom.
Right.
And then they sent an ear in the mail, basically saying, if you don't give us like $2.2 million, you're going to get him back in pieces. So
interesting.
Once that happened, he was pretty mixed up in drugs before this happened, but after the kidnapping, he was a very tragically bad drug addict, to the point where he had a very bad stroke, and he was handicapped for much of his life after that stroke.
Oh, wow.
And that is Balthazar Getty's father.
Interesting.
But I think that's fascinating that his father was held for ransom and his ear was cut off. I mean, that
Right.
is the most David Lynch thing
I know.
that I could possibly think of.
I know. That's interesting. Wow. Okay. And now I want to watch Blue Velvet again. All right.
I know, right?
Okay. Who else do we have? Jack Nance, another Twin Peaks actor we talked about.
Yep.
Don't have to go into his resume because we just about talk about it in every David Lynch film we talk about, or Twin Peaks.
Yep.
Of course, the great Pete Martell, the legendary
The
Pete
great
Martell.
Pete Martell.
And yes, the log lady stole his truck. We know it wasn't
The
the log
great
lady,
Henry,
but
the great Henry Spencer.
yes, exactly. From Eraserhead.
The late great. Yeah, this is
We had Scott.
Jack,
oh, go ahead.
this Jack Nance's last movie? I think it is.
I think it is too, because I don't think he was in Inland Empire. I don't remember seeing him.
And I don't think he's in The Straight Story either. At least I know he's not in The Straight Story. The Straight Story was made way after
Right. His death.
he passed
Yeah.
away.
Right.
And I'm wondering if this is his last movie. And I'm looking it up right now. And where is the full filmography? There we go.
Be more intuitive, IMDb.
Lost Highway is his. Yeah, this is, interestingly enough,
Mm-hmm.
the last movie for 3 people.
Yes, I know one of them, in addition to Jack Nance, being Richard Pryor.
Richard Pryor's last movie.
We'll talk about him in a minute. Yeah.
Uh-huh. And this is also Robert Blake's last movie.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. For obvious reasons. Okay. So we also had Scott Coffey, who played Trick in Twin Peaks The Return.
Trick in Twin Peaks The Return, and
He was also in Mulholland Drive.
he's Wilkins in Mulholland Drive.
And he's in Inland Empire.
And he is my favorite person in Ben Stein's economics class in Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Which one is he? Remind me.
His name is Adams, and he's the one that while Ben Stein is talking, he's just sitting there like
Zoned out.
Mouth open,
Right.
zoned out, his mouth open.
That's funny.
He makes me laugh every time I see him on
The
screen.
one that's kind of going like,
That's
yeah,
it, yeah.
okay,
That
all right.
is
You can't
Scott.
see, obviously, in podcast land, but yeah, I'm to kind of like have my mouth agape and tilting my head to the side.
That is Scott Coffey. Yep.
All right. That's interesting. I never made that connection.
Mm-hmm.
I think you've mentioned that before, but it's never stuck. So that's, as far as I can tell, that's the only Twin Peaks actors in this film.
That's all I found.
Yeah. So that's like 3. That's it. It's very trippy.
Yeah, this is a very different departure for him.
Yeah, this is definitely a departure. And like I said, Lynch vets from other Lynch films, apart from, like, say, Scott Coffey, there aren't any.
No.
So this is most like actors who have never worked with David Lynch before and never do again.
And and I'm sad for a lot of that because I think Patricia Arquette fits right in.
I think so. Because obviously she plays the femme fatale in this movie. Because, again, it's a neo-noir film.
Right.
And, you think he would have used her again. But maybe she thought, oh, this one time, that's enough. I got my fill. Who knows?
Yeah, I have no idea how that worked, but I think she would fit right in with the Lynchiverse.
Yeah, so speaking of Patricia Arquette, she plays a dual role, or is it singular? We'll never know. Of Renee Madison and Alice Wakefield.
Right.
And Patricia Arquette, obviously famous for lots of different things. True Romance. She was in Ed Wood.
Mm-hmm. She's in Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, The Dream Warriors.
Right. I figured you would mention that one.
Hell yeah, I do.
And she's notable because, she starred in the TV series Medium,
which I absolutely loved. And
I've never seen that series.
It's very good. It's very good.
I've heard it's good. I know it's got a fandom.
And as we said last time, she was briefly married to Nicolas Cage.
Right. That's true. You did mention that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I saw her recently, not too long ago, when she was on HBO's Boardwalk Empire.
Oh, right.
And she was really good on that.
She's really good.
Yeah, she's a really good actress. And I know I think she was in the movie Boyhood, if I'm not mistaken.
Have you seen Boyhood? It's fabulous.
I have not seen Boyhood.
It is
I know of it.
so good. It's the life of a boy from about age 6 to about age 18.
Mm-hmm.
but it took 12 years to make because he used the same actors.
Right.
So you actually, it's a Richard Linklater movie. Richard Linklater, famous for before sunrise, before sunset, those
Okay.
things, and of course, Slacker and Dazed and Confused.
Okay.
And so we start out with this little kid who, he's got parents who are getting divorced, and then his mom goes back to college. His dad gets remarried. He has some step siblings. His mom gets remarried a couple of times, and we see him grow up to be age 18. And
Right.
it's just really, really interesting because it just sort of seamlessly goes together, and you realize I've watched this kid grow up from like age 6 to age 18. I believe he's 18
Interesting.
when he sent,
Yeah.
it's, and like I said, it took 12 years to make. It's fantastic. I really do like Richard Linklater. Probably, another really interesting one he did was called The Waking Life. It's that sort of rotoscoping animation where it's filmed and then animated over.
Right.
Um,
It's like the Aha video. Take on me.
yeah, kind of like that. And then if, oh, I
Or
would
like
have to say,
Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs also.
if you're Gen X, you really
Yeah.
need to see both Dazed and Confused and Slacker. Slacker is my favorite out of the two. I know a lot of people love Dazed and Confused, and I love it too. It's fantastic.
Hmm.
Slacker is really, 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 really good.
Okay.
I absolutely, absolutely adore it. And Before Sunrise, Before Sunset, all of those are just lovely, lovely movies. And there's a third one, and Before Midnight. I never saw Before Midnight, but
Mm.
Before Sunrise and Before Sunset, they're both lovely. They're just really
Okay.
adorable love stories. So I highly, highly recommend.
So it sounds like he did a trilogy almost.
Yeah, he did. But it's just it's very cute love stories, and it's Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy,
Okay.
and they're different. Again, it's different time periods in their meeting, their relationships, things like that. So
Okay. Some other actors, obviously, Bill Pullman plays Fred Madison, at least before he turns into Balthazar Getty.
he's Bobby Briggs. No, I'm just kidding.
Kind of. So Bill
Wake up
Pullman,
one day
obviously,
and Balthazar Getty's in your bed. You must be Shelley Briggs.
but Bill Pullman,
Anyway,
obviously known to geeks as Lone Star in
Lone Star and
Spaceballs,
the president,
right? In
the
Independence
in
Day,
Independence
yes,
Day, the president, yeah,
yeah, and the
and
sequel too that
yep.
I never saw.
Oh, it's
But
so good, Charles.
yeah,
It's big and stupid, just like the first one. They know exactly
right.
what they've got going on. It's big and stupid and very entertaining.
Okay, so makes sense. Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, hosting Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast, I'm familiar with Bill Pullman because he played a character named Oswald Danes in Torchwood Miracle Day.
Oh my God, that's right.
Yeah, he was kind of like the big bad.
See, and here's the thing about. I mean, I love me some Bill Pullman. Don't get me wrong.
Right, right.
Um, I have no idea
So of course I had to
how.
mention that.
I don't know. I don't have any idea how people in the '90s used to get him confused with Bill Paxton, but
Yeah, I don't see it either.
they're totally Bill Paxton. God
Oh
rest
no,
his
their last
soul.
names end with P and their first names are Bill. What do we do?
I absolutely freaking adored Bill Paxton to be,
Yeah,
I have his album. Okay. Like,
yeah,
I love Bill Paxton. As much as I love Bill Pullman,
right.
I don't know if he's gritty enough for this role.
Oh, you think he was miscast?
I don't know if he was miscast. I guess I'm
I
just
think,
more used to
yeah.
straight-laced Bill Pullman, like I said, president, or even Lone Star is not going to,
Right.
murder somebody out in the middle of the desert,
Right.
or his character.
So you think you need an actor that would play cold and detached a little better?
Yeah, I think
More aloof.
yeah, a little bit grittier, and I'm not sure who I would pick, frankly.
Interesting.
But I had a hard time thinking of him.
Now that you brought it up, now I'm kind of wondering who I would cast.
Yeah.
I have to think about that. I don't know.
He does a fine job. This is nothing against Bill Pullman. I just think that there's,
You think there was just something lacking there?
he's got like a Jeff Daniels type of quality. Like when he tries,
I can see that.
When he tries to play a bad guy, it's like an undercover cop.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That you can't quite take him completely seriously.
I believe he's trying to act like a bad guy to be in with the bad guys.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't think he has an edge to him?
No. Whereas I believe somebody like a Justin Theroux,
right,
is a total shitheel.
Right. So you think maybe they should have got Justin Theroux for this?
He would have been a little too young at the time, I think.
Okay. But someone like him then.
Boy, who would be a good 1997?
Mm-hmm.
Who would have been? Honestly, I hate to say it. I think Brad Pitt would have been great.
Oh, I could see that.
Brad Pitt. I mean, have you seen California?
Right.
Brad Pitt can be disgusting. So
yeah,
Or
there's Fight Club or Seven. Take your pick. You could do that.
Or 12 Monkeys, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's like. And I'm not a huge fan of watching him pretend to play the saxophone.
Right.
It's almost as bad as Rob Lowe pretending to play the saxophone. And I will watch Rob Lowe do anything. But,
interesting.
I grew up in the 80s, Charles. What do you want from me?
That's all right. No, I'm not judging. All right. That's fair. Robert Blake. So this gets a little interesting.
Robert Blake, who was one of the little rascals.
Yes.
Charles.
So
that's
that
how
was
long
one of the
this man has been acting.
That's one of the things I was going to bring up, believe it or not.
Yep.
So as someone who came home from school and would watch Little Rascals reruns on WUAB 43, along with Spider-Man, Battle of the Planets, and Star Blazers.
Nice. So you watched yourself some Superhost, didn't you?
Pretty much. And then also Fleischer Popeye cartoons, which were awesome.
Hell yes, you did.
The best Popeye cartoons ever.
The best Popeye cartoons in the history of Popeye cartoons.
Yes,
you did.
So I'm very familiar with Little Rascals shorts from way back in the day, and recognize him because he played the character of Mickey.
Mickey, yes.
On Little Rascals.
Mm-hmm.
So, who I believe kind of took over from Porky, if I believe.
I think so. Correctly. Yeah, I think you're right. The other thing he's most famous for was he was Beretta in the 70s.
Right. He played. Yeah, that's a show I did watch a little bit of in the 70s. He played Detective Tony Beretta.
With his bird. He
had a cockatoo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Named Fred.
He had his bird.
Yeah.
Kojak had his lollipops. BJ had his bear. Everybody had like a little
gimmick. Yeah.
A little gimmick sidekick. Yeah, but he was Beretta.
But because of that cockatoo, I always ended up naming things Fred, especially plants.
Nice. Okay.
So that's kind of like I got a dinosaur back here, a stuffed dinosaur. That's Fred.
Yes, it's a stuffed dinosaur that if you're not looking closely enough at it, it looks like Charmander. I think it's Charmander.
Right, a little bit. It looks a little bit like Charmander, but it's not Charmander.
Which is interesting because my childhood teddy bear is named Freddy, but that had nothing to do with Beretta. So
that was probably Freddy from Nightmare on Elm Street, I'm guessing.
No. It was before that. I mean, I'm talking like when I was like a year and a half old. I named this thing, and I think it's just because it sounded like Teddy, but it wasn't Teddy, so he was Freddy Teddy.
Yeah.
And
I just started naming things Fred because I thought it sounded funny.
That sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, Robert Blake. actor since he was like 5.
Right.
And his last movie is this movie right here, Lost Highway.
Yes.
And if you ask me, he steals this movie. He is by far the best performance in this movie. He is terrifying. He is wonderful.
Right.
He's perfect. He's absolutely, absolutely perfect.
And he's got a total David Lynch look to him, which is one
Oh,
of the things I want to run down in trivia.
yeah, it's amazing. But then 2001 comes around. And
Yeah.
there was a woman, and I'm not meaning to speak ill of the dead, but her name is Bonnie Bakley.
Mm-hmm.
And you were talking earlier about David Lynch being married 4 times. Robert Blake was her 10th husband.
Whoa.
Yes. And she kind of had a habit, penchant, shall we say, for finding older men in Hollywood and trying to scam them somehow, bilk them somehow. That was her MO.
So essentially a gold digger is what you're saying.
Even seedier than a gold digger, you know. A gold digger might just make sure that they only pick from millionaires that they might fall in love with. But this is sort of like, okay, him, they might be, it's more of a racket, I think, than gold digging.
Okay.
So he meets Bonnie Bakley, and she is pregnant with a child that she tells both Robert Blake and Christian Brando, the
son of Marlon
Brando, that they're both the father. And he demands a DNA test on this child. Mm-hmm. Gets it, finds out that he's this child's father, so he kind of grudgingly marries her. And they go out to eat one night at this restaurant that he's a regular at. They know him.
Okay.
And a lot of people say that he did this to establish an alibi, because he said he forgot something in the restaurant, left her in the car, comes back, she's been shot. She was murdered.
Right.
And so he was arrested for her murder, and
But he was acquitted, though, wasn't he?
There's not a lot of evidence to prove it, other than basically, man, I wish that bitch was dead, like that kind of stuff.
Right.
That,
yeah.
Just sort of, talk.
Circumstantial evidence.
Yeah, talk when you're angry, but the consensus of most people is that he hired someone to kill her because he wanted his daughter. He wanted to have his daughter, but she had issues. She had mental issues. When you are married 10 times because you're looking for a meal ticket, that's an issue.
Yes.
So, but yeah, that's why we haven't seen Robert Blake in a while. He was acquitted, and I don't want to say it's as bad as like Fatty Arbuckle, where he's acquitted but then totally blacklisted.
Right.
And he's deeply, deeply in debt. He had millions of dollars of legal fees. He had millions of dollars of back taxes. So he's declared multiple bankruptcy. He would like to act again to be able to make some money to be able to pay off some of this stuff, but I don't think anybody wants to touch him with a 29.5-foot pole.
So essentially he's radioactive, is what you're saying.
He's kryptonite right now.
Yeah. And now he's like 86, I believe. Somewhere in there.
Yeah, I think something like that. Yeah, 86 or 7. But he, that's Robert Blake.
Yeah, so I'm guessing this is something that comes up, as someone who's aficionado of true Hollywood crime, that kind of thing.
Yeah, this is definitely an A.J. Benza story.
Yeah, right.
And honestly, and I hate to say this because I don't mean to make light of anyone's murder. Bonnie Bakley was a disturbed woman. She had issues. She did not deserve to be murdered. I am not making light of her murder. But this makes this character in this movie that much creepier. To have that, to have the fact that it's Robert Blake.
Right. Because you've got an alleged murderer in the cast. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like when you go back and you watch Naked Gun, you're like, oh, yeah, OJ's in this. I should be laughing.
Yeah, that's another thing. It's funny you bring up OJ because that's something else I want to talk about in trivia.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So stay tuned. All right, so we also have the great Robert Loggia as Mr. Eddie / Dick Laurent, as in Dick Laurent is dead. Dick Laurent.
Yeah, this is my all-time favorite Robert Loggia character ever.
Yeah. So he's been obviously a lot of different things over the years. He's a great character actor. He pops up every so often in the movies. I know him from playing Al Marcione in Revenge of the Pink Panther.
Mm-hmm.
He was also in the movie Big with Tom Hanks. He got a lot of attention there. He's also in, interestingly enough, Wild Palms.
Wild Palms.
Which a lot of people from back in the day, if you're not familiar with it, essentially a lot of people thought it was like it was this TV miniseries.
It was going to be the new Twin Peaks, is what people.
It was going to be the new Twin Peaks. That's the way it was hyped.
Yeah.
And then you watched it and you're like, no, it's not.
It's not. No. This is just a weird show.
Exactly. It's not even close. But a lot of us had like that expectation going into this. No. Not nearly as stylish or even in the same league, really. Mm-hmm. And he was also recently in The Sopranos, among other things. So, great character actor. Obviously, you've seen him in a billion places.
For a while, he got kind of typecast as being there were two things with him. He got typecast as being a mobster, or people thought he was Ben Gazzara. Apparently, as they got older, both him and Ben Gazzara would get confused for the other one.
They started morphing into each other.
Yeah, Ben Gazzara, if any of you Gen Xers out there remember the movie Roadhouse, which you should. Roadhouse. Yeah. Ben Gazzara is the guy that owns the Rival Bar.
Oh, okay.
But he was probably my favorite time where he plays a gangster after this is John Landis's Innocent Blood. Have you seen that, Charles?
I have not. No.
It's his take on a comedic vampire movie.
Okay.
And there's a very funny scene where he's with the vampire woman who is like a hooker.
Yeah.
And he's trying to eat a linguine and clam sauce. Yeah. And of course she's recoiling because it is loaded with garlic.
Right, that makes sense. So, yes.
Yeah, it's not.
So essentially, I would be doing the same thing because I can't.
Yeah, exactly. Charles is.
I'd be like, yeah.
Yeah, Charles is secretly a vampire. I have literally never seen him in the sunlight. Okay.
Hey, that's not my fault.
I'm just saying.
You just come out. You don't invite me over in the daytime, so yeah.
Well, they don't show midnight movies in the daytime, Charles.
I know. That's my point.
Nor do they show primetime TV shows in the daytime. So that's when you come over.
I have no home.
Or hunted.
Despised. Living like an animal.
Or I am not an animal. Or we've seen each other indoors. So yeah, I've never seen Charles in direct sunlight. So what does that say? Anyway. Yes, Robert
that would explain why I don't see my own reflection in a mirror, but okay.
That would explain. So yeah, Robert Loggia, of course, my all-time favorite Robert Loggia scene in the history of film.
Yes.
Is him just unloading on the guy who's tailgating him.
Right.
Where, he's the guy passes him, gives him the finger, and then his two goons in the back seat just look at each other and put their seatbelts on.
Right. Because they know what's coming. They know
what's coming. And he does what we all want to do. He pulls in front of this guy, smashes his window, yanks him out, and yells at him about what safe distances you should be keeping when you're driving at 55 miles an hour. How many people? 50,000 people died on the highway because of assholes like you.
Read the effing manual.
I want you to get you a manual. I want you to study that mother effer. He's just
Yeah.
yelling everything we've always wanted to yell at a bad driver. Robert
Right.
Loggia gets to do in this movie. And interestingly enough, Charles, Greg
Yeah.
Travis, the guy who plays the tailgater in this movie,
Okay.
was in a couple of episodes of Sherilyn Fenn's TV show Rude Awakening that she did for Showtime.
Oh, interesting.
So, yeah.
I've never seen that. I need to check
It's
that
so
out.
good. It was so good. I love that show.
Which is weird. It's got Sherilyn Fenn in it. You think I would have been all over that, but no.
Yeah, maybe you just weren't all over having Showtime in like 1998.
Probably. Yeah. I don't think so. All right. We also had Natasha Gregson Wagner as Sheila. That's essentially the girl that Pete is involved with.
Before it's Alice Wakefield.
Right, exactly. And she was in the original Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie.
Cassandra,
yeah, exactly.
Cassandra. Yeah.
And she was also in the John Cusack movie High Fidelity.
She was. And she is Natalie Wood's daughter.
Yes, she is. That was another thing I was going to bring up, but you're right. So, yeah, apparently, judging by the name, I guess she's still close with Robert Wagner.
She and her
stepfather.
Her father, oh, what is his name? I cannot think of his name.
Well, her father has the last name Gregson. I know that.
Yeah,
he's
a British director, producer. I forget. Oh God, I can't. It's going to kill me unless I figure this out. Richard Gregson, producer Richard Gregson is her father.
Right.
And he was married to Natalie Wood, and then they broke up when Natalie Wood caught him cheating on her. And Natasha was maybe about a year and a half when they got divorced, and she remarried. Well, she was married to Robert Wagner like in the late 50s, early 60s.
Yeah, but then they got remarried.
They got divorced. Then they met up again and realized that they really were still in love with each other. And they got remarried, and they were married until her death.
Right.
And she, like I said, Natasha was at a year and a half, and he adopted her. And so that's why she's Natasha Gregson Wagner. And she refers to both men by their last names. She calls Richard Gregson Daddy Gregson and Robert Wagner Daddy Wagner.
Interesting.
That's how she would differentiate them as a child. Yeah, she'll say my Daddy Gregson and my Daddy Wagner.
Interesting. I'm sure that had to be a little bit confusing as a kid.
Well, possibly. I mean, there's two men that they are in some way, and
right.
I think it's no different than having a stepfather. Just one lives with you and one doesn't. You know.
Yeah, having never had a stepfather, so I guess maybe it's just my own experience. I can't quite process how that works. So.
Gotcha. I guess I just knew a lot of kids with stepfathers that I.
Yeah.
Just sort of paid attention to how that works.
Okay.
Some were more involved than others, but you know.
Understandable. Okay.
Just depends on the guy. Yeah.
Now, we mentioned this a little bit. We had comedy legend Richard Pryor in this movie.
In his last film role before he passed away from complications due to multiple sclerosis.
Right, which is a horrible, horrible disease.
A horrible, insidious disease that makes you rot from the inside out. It's horrible.
Right. It's nightmarish, essentially.
Right. And there's nothing, you can't catch it. It's just congenital. It just happens.
Right. Well, I mean, to be fair, Richard Pryor just did about every drug known to man back in the day. So
how the hell do you...
That could have been part of it.
How the hell do you set yourself on fire and what kills you is MS? That's just not fair. That is not fair.
Right. Yeah.
You want to talk about being married a lot of times? What was he married? 6 times?
Probably. Yeah.
He was married. He was like Liz Taylor. I think he was married 6 times to 5 women. Because Jennifer Pryor was his wife when he passed away, but they were married previously. And then when he got sick, she sort of came back to take care of him, and they got married again. And she's Jennifer Pryor is technically who is his widow. Also, his daughter, Rain Pryor.
Yes, I know her.
Starred in Rude Awakening with Sherilyn Fenn.
Oh, brilliant.
So
Nicely done. Nicely tied up. So he plays Arnie in this movie. He's the owner of the garage where Pete works.
where Pete and
And
Jack Nance work.
Pete and Jack Nance work. That had to be a really interesting place to work. Richard Pryor, obviously known for things like the Muppet movie. He played, he's like the balloon guy, wasn't he, in the Muppet
Yeah,
movie?
but why not get two? These
Yeah.
guys coming through here all the time, they buy a bunch of balloons for their girls. They go gaga for it.
I know him from films like Stir Crazy with Gene Wilder, who we talked
Well,
about on Drunk Cinema with Young Frankenstein.
Silver
There's also,
Streak is my favorite of Gene Wilder, Richard
yeah,
Pryor movies.
yeah.
Yeah.
He was also in The Toy with Jackie Gleason.
Horrible movie. So is Superman 3, but I love them
Yeah,
both.
yeah. Superman 3 I was going to bring up because he plays Gus Gorman in that one,
Hmm.
which was essentially just like, hey, let's have Superman and Richard Pryor team up in a movie.
I mean, you gotta love that Richard Pryor plays like this computer hacking genius.
Right, right.
But it's a bad movie. It's not.
It is my least favorite of the Superman films, and that includes Superman 4, The
I
Quest
was
for
gonna
Peace.
say, does that include Superman 4? Because damn,
Yes.
so. It
Yeah.
is not my
That's
least
how
favorite.
low I rank it, is that I put it below Superman 4.
I don't put it below Superman 4 for one reason and one reason alone. And do you want to know what that reason is? Can you guess what that
What
reason is?
um that would be Annette O'Toole, right?
Hell yes, it's Annette O'Toole.
Yeah.
Yeah,
See, I could see that argument.
yeah. Annette
If the
O'Toole is
if the film
so
had stopped at the
so
Smallville
good.
scenes, yeah,
Yeah, the Annette O'Toole parts are so good that it's worth it to me
yeah.
because
If the film, yeah,
she's
that's
just
a
a
whole other
gem.
rant.
She's a gem of an actress. I absolutely adore her. But
Well, she's my
yeah.
favorite Martha Kent of all time. Tell you that.
Oh, I could. Yeah, well, I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
she
Charles,
was fantastic on Smallville.
don't forget, we're talking about the car wash.
Oh yeah,
Come
yeah,
on, y'all, now
exactly.
sing it with me, car wash. Yeah.
Lots of different things. I mean, there's Brewster's Millions. There was JoJo Dancer, Your Life is Calling.
What was that movie I was talking about during Young Frankenstein, where Marty Feldman is a monk and Richard Pryor is God?
Oh, I can't remember.
I forget. I'll look it up again. I was drunk
drinking at the
talking about
time.
that.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it's a thing. Look up Marty
yeah.
Feldman. You'll find it.
It's on the podcast. I'll have to listen to it,
Yeah,
and
it's
you
Marty
should too.
Feldman. It's Marty Feldman, Louise Lasser, Richard Pryor, and Andy Kaufman. So
Yeah.
you'll find it.
Now, one of the really interesting casting in this movie is, and that says a lot, Henry Rollins turns up
Henry Rollins as a prison guard.
as Guard Henry,
Yep.
as in Henry Rollins from Black Flag and
Black
the Rollins
Flag.
Band. That Henry Rollins.
Yep.
So this is another case where David Lynch has a thing for musicians.
And Henry Rollins, this is a bad joke, but I think it's funny,
Yeah.
where he says, shit, that wife killer is really looking effed up. And the other guard says, which one?
Right.
And they just laugh because,
Did-
yeah, when you are prison guards on death row, just saying the wife killer does not narrow it down.
Well, you got to amuse yourself somehow in that kind of
Yeah,
that kind of a
exactly.
job, I guess. But he also, notable from films like Oh Hey, Johnny Mnemonic with Keanu Reeves.
Mm-hmm.
He was also on the short-lived TV series Deadly Class, that was on
Mm-hmm.
Sci-Fi, that was based on the Image comic series. He was really good on that show.
And he was on the short-lived series done by Alan Tudyk called Con Man.
I did not see that one.
Okay, Con Man, and I forget, it was like Yahoo Video or something. It was an internet show called Con Man, and it was essentially about, I don't want to say washed up actors, but genre actors who are known for one thing,
Right.
sort of now being relegated to doing conventions as their main source of income.
Right.
And it was kind of funny because the Alan Tudyk character had been on this show that was a sci-fi show about this ragtag group of people on a spaceship that's kind of a junky spaceship, but they're all sort of like a ragtag crew of people. And,
you mean kind of like Firefly?
And the captain of the show, of this ship, went to an extremely successful detective TV show.
That's funny.
Kind of like Nathan Fillion.
Kind of like Nathan Fillion, yeah.
On Castle.
Fire.
So it was,
right.
But it had a lot of good people. It had, I can't think of her name. Patricia Helfer was in a few episodes.
Oh yeah, from Battlestar Galactica, number 6.
Yeah, well, Henry Rollins played Adam Baldwin, essentially.
That's funny.
That's
actually pretty good casting, I think.
He's really mad at the Alan Tudyk character for outing him in Hollywood as a Republican.
That's hilarious. That's because Baldwin is as a Republican, yes.
Yeah, so he's essentially the Adam Baldwin character. So.
That is funny.
Yeah, it's quite amusing.
That's funny. Gary Busey turns up as Bill Dayton, the father of Pete, notable, of course, for initially playing Buddy Holly in the Buddy Holly story,
for which he received an Oscar nomination for Best Actor.
Right.
Yeah.
I know Zan is a huge Buddy Holly fan, so.
Huge Buddy Holly fan, and he does a fantastic, fantastic job. In my mind, I would say he's better Buddy Holly on film than Marshall Crenshaw, and that is hard for me to say out loud.
Really?
I love Marshall Crenshaw, and Marshall Crenshaw did a great job, but I think Gary Busey did more with the character. He had more to do with the character, and I think he did a better job, because I don't know if you ever saw, was it Behind the Music? It was I think it might have been Behind the Music. It was a documentary about the day the music died, essentially, about all three of them, and the situation itself, the winter dance party, the plane crash.
With the Big Bopper and Richie Valens and all that, yeah.
Richie Valens. And they talk about, how difficult life was for Waylon Jennings after Waylon Jennings made his offhanded comment, where Waylon Jennings and Buddy Holly were friends, and there was something about, they were arguing over it, and Buddy Holly just says, "Well, I hope your old bus freezes up." And he says, "Well, I hope your old plane crashes."
Oh. And
he had a very hard time with that for a very, very long time.
That's a hard one to take back. Yes.
That's a hard one. Yeah. And I mean, there's no way he could have known. There's no way he didn't mean anything by it. It was just an offhanded, joking comment. And it was very, very difficult for him. So so anyway, in this documentary, they talked to Gary Busey, who, even as a child, seemed to feel this kindred spirit feeling with Buddy Holly. So there's a lot of love there for Buddy Holly himself. And
good.
I think that's why Gary Busey does such a Gary Busey is another one where he doesn't have to be as crazy as he is, but when he's acting, he can be, like in this movie, he's pretty understated. He's not very Gary Busey-ish.
No, well, this is before the motorcycle accident, isn't it?
But he's still, but Gary Busey still has always been kind of a loose cannon.
Yeah, but I mean, after the accident, though, that's when he really kind of tipped over the edge.
I think that's when he was just sort of like, okay, screw it, life is short, let's do this thing.
Okay.
I think that's what. But
well, he's notable also because he did Predator 2.
Heck yeah,
he was in
Red.
Point Break.
Oh, so good in Point Break.
Yep. And the Simpsons episode, On a Clear Day, I Can't See My Sister.
That's my impression of Gary Busey laughing on The Simpsons. Interesting you bring up The Simpsons, Charles, because there are 2 actors who have appeared in all 3 of the longest running primetime scripted series in U.S. television history.
Okay.
Those, of course, being Gunsmoke, The Simpsons, and Law and Order.
Right.
And there's only 2 actors who have been in all 3 of those series. Gary Busey is one, and the other one is Werner Klemperer.
Really?
Yes.
As in Colonel Klink himself.
As in Colonel Klink. Yes.
Wow. Hogan.
Yeah, so the 2 of them are the only actors to star in the top 3 longest running primetime TV series in the history of U.S. television.
Well, I've seen some Law and Order over the years, but I haven't seen that one. But I do remember him from The Simpsons.
The Simpsons is a great one because Bart has to stay 500 feet away from Lisa. She gets a restraining order. So
Right.
he has to watch this video called Your Restraining Order and You, hosted by Gary Busey.
That's funny.
Let's meet Joe, nickname Spaghetti-O. And at the end, he's like, I'll let you in on another little secret. Joe is me, and Mary is an amalgam of 3 women and 1 independent film company who just couldn't handle me because I'm too real.
That's funny.
It's wonderful. It's one of the best.
That's
It's
cool.
one of the best guest spots on The Simpsons where somebody plays themselves.
Yeah.
You know, I would say probably after Gary Busey, I would probably say James Woods.
Right. Although we know how James Woods turned out, so.
Stupid, no good mother effing cheese.
Yeah.
So great.
Speaking of awkward actors to talk about these days, you know where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
Marilyn Manson turns up.
In a porno. Gross.
Along with Twiggy Ramirez as a porn actor.
The last thing I want to see, I would rather see Gary Busey in porn than Marilyn Manson.
So I'm presuming that these were like, you know, the two guys that are like, you know, doing it with Alice Wakefield.
Yeah.
So Patricia Arquette's character.
Yeah, that's just gross. Marilyn Manson can eat a bag of you know what, Charles.
Right, pretty much. So with Henry Rollins and Marilyn Manson in this movie, again, on top of Chris Isaak, David Bowie.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a thing for musicians, obviously.
I think so. Yeah, exactly.
So, but yeah, obviously at the time, Marilyn Manson, was understandable, but
yes,
nowadays not so much.
Yeah, Marilyn Manson was relevant for about 5 minutes in 1997.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I will say,
and he's on the soundtrack.
Yeah.
As well.
He does a cover of Screaming Jay Hawkins' "I Put a Spell on You."
Yeah.
I can say a million bad things about Marilyn Manson, but I will say one good thing about him.
Okay.
And that is Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold were very big fans of Marilyn Manson.
Okay.
So for those of you who don't know who those names are off the top of your head, they were the murderers in the Columbine massacre. And they were big Marilyn Manson fans. And so Marilyn Manson got interviewed a lot, like, what is your music saying to children? You know, blah, blah, all that crap like that Ozzy got back in the 80s and the whole satanic panic bullshit.
Right. Yeah.
And someone asked him, and I forget who it was, and I want to say it was Diane Sawyer, but I could be wrong, but said, what would you have said to these kids if you'd had the chance? And he said, nothing. I would have listened.
Okay.
And I will give him credit for that. And that's it. And then we are done with good things I have to say about Marilyn Manson.
Okay. My only good thing about Marilyn Manson, I could probably say, is I like his cover of "This Is Halloween" from the Nightmare Before Christmas.
Okay.
Remix album.
Yeah, I don't like anything that he's ever done. I've never liked a Marilyn Manson song.
"This Is Halloween" is actually pretty good. I like that.
No.
Okay. All right. So this movie, 2 hours 14 minutes, did not get any awards, by the way.
We need to mention 2 more cast members before.
Okay, go ahead. Who did I miss? Who did I forget?
Well, there is a brief cameo in this movie by a screen legend, a woman who has been in every John Waters movie ever made.
Okay.
Talking about the great Mink Stoll, who is one of my all-time favorite cult movie people. She is the jury foreperson. She's the voice of the jury foreperson who says that.
Oh, that he's guilty?
Is guilty. Yes.
Okay.
It's her voice.
Interesting.
And we need to talk a little bit about Michael Massey.
All right.
Michael Massey is the actor who plays Andy, who is the guy whose party they're at, that Fred and Renee are at the beginning of the movie when
Right. When the mystery man shows up. Yeah.
first meets Mystery Man, and he's the guy that Alice sets up for Pete to knock out and for them to rob him, and he's the one that gets killed with the
right. Yeah, with the table. You get the glass table right through the forehead.
This is why I will never have a glass coffee table.
Which is a spectacular death, by the way.
I am not kidding. I will never own a coffee table that is just a thin piece of glass for this exact reason, for this very movie.
Yeah. Just so, on that note, I have to say I love Lynch's shot of underneath the top as you're looking up at his face with the as the blood's dripping down on the floor.
And it's a great effect. All you have to do is cut out like a rounded piece.
Right, exactly. To put your forehead in.
It's so gruesome.
It's so effective. Yeah, it's great.
I
got to give him points for that shot.
Michael Massey, and this is a very traumatic thing, and I don't, if anybody is listening and knows him, I'm not trying to put any blame on him,
right,
or say anything was his fault or anything like that. He should never feel like this was his fault or anything, or he should not feel any guilt about this. Michael Massey is who killed Brandon Lee.
Oh, in The Crow.
He's Fun Boy.
During the filming. Oh, because he didn't know his gun was loaded.
Well, it was somebody had loaded it with a live round instead of blanks.
Right, but my point is, he thought it was loaded with blanks.
He he intentionally killed Brandon Lee, but Brandon Lee was killed on screen in an accident where live were used instead of blanks.
I never realized he was Fun Boy.
Yeah, he's Fun Boy. That's Michael Massey.
Wow.
Yep.
That's a movie we could talk about here on Ghostwood if we want, because it's got David Patrick Kelly in it.
That's an excellent point.
Right.
But he says he's still, well, he's gone now. He died of stomach cancer in 2016, I think.
Oh, that's a rough way to go.
He had nightmares for 20 years about that. It was.
Oh, I'll bet. I can imagine, like, accidentally killing somebody like that on a movie set.
I am not blaming him. I am not saying it's his fault. I'm not saying he did it on purpose. I'm just saying that he was the one that fired the gun that killed him.
Well, there's a lot of speculation, and then we could go down this whole big rabbit hole about Brandon Lee's death. But there's a lot of different speculation about, like, well, was it like, was it like it
was the curse of
Chinese, the curse of Brandon, or curse of Bruce Lee? Was it maybe something involving the Chinese triads?
Right.
Was it just some disgruntled worker? Who knows?
But it was not Michael Massey at all. It's not. He happened.
He was handed the gun that was loaded.
There's the scene. It's a terrible scene. He comes in on Fun Boy with a woman, and they're in bed, and Fun Boy keeps shooting him.
Right.
Don't you ever effing die?
Right.
And the whole time, the crow is telling the joke about Jesus comes into a hotel with a hammer and nails and says, "Can you put me up for the night?"
Right.
He's telling that old bad joke. But that's the scene that killed Brandon Lee.
Wow.
And that was nasty.
Wow. I never made that connection. That's disturbing, but
it's very
it's interesting. It's interesting.
Yes.
It's disturbing, but it's interesting.
But like I said, by no means it's his fault. And I just wanted to shout out to Mink Stoll, because as much as I love David Lynch, I adore John Waters. And Mink Stoll she's pretty much in everything he's ever done. Yeah.
So what are your personal faves?
Mink Stoll, I think, is John Waters, Jack Nance.
Well, that's all right. Nothing wrong with that. It gives you regular work, right?
Yep, that's right.
Exactly. Jack Nance made a career of it, right? So soundtrack, I know we had, there's a lot of great stuff on the soundtrack, because you've got David Bowie, you've got the Nine Inch Nails, you got the Smashing Pumpkins, a great cover of This Magic Moment by Lou Reed.
But
you've got the soundtrack that she's holding up right in front of me.
I do.
I need a copy of that. I need to get that. I'm going to have to get me a copy.
There's a great cover on here. I'm looking at this. There's not. What's interesting about this soundtrack is there's some, but there's not a ton of Angelo on this.
Right.
There's a
But
lot.
there's also somebody, this guy named Barry Adamson.
Barry
And
Adamson. Yep.
and there's this one track that I really love because it's called Something Wicked This Way Comes. And it
Yeah.
samples the song Spooky. This,
Mm-hmm.
it's that great scene where the mystery man comes in
Right.
and, and meets Fred, and you hear it in the background. And I'm just like, oh my God, Spooky is in this. They use Spooky for the score in this.
You know what, Charles? There's also
Yeah.
something on this soundtrack that's in this movie that's not on this soundtrack, and I'm going to have to look in my record collection to see if I have it. So talk amongst yourselves.
Okay. As you do in a podcast, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then of course Rammstein.
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 This is where I first learned of Rammstein. It was this movie
Really?
first. Yeah.
See,
Mm-hmm.
Mine was The Matrix, but
Okay.
yeah, that's when I first got introduced. Was Rammstein? When are you doing the song "Du hast"? You have.
Du hast mich. Yep.
Du hast mich gefragt. Oder nicht gesagt.
Yeah, there's a song on this the scene where Alice and Pete are having sex on the beach.
Right.
And I mean that literally, not the beverage.
Yes. You mean in the desert, not on the beach?
Yes, in the desert. Yeah, they're having sex in the desert.
Yeah. Because there's no water there.
There's no water there. Yeah. The song that's playing is a song called "Song to the Siren." It's a Tim Buckley song.
Okay.
That's covered by This Mortal Coil, and it's really beautiful. And I thought it was on the soundtrack, and I thought I had that record, and I don't. So.
Hole in the collection.
Alfred, let's go shopping.
Nicely done. Nicely done. Some trivia. Okay, I know it took us a while to get here, but we got to the trivia at least. So we're working on it. This film was a box office disappointment, needless to say. It only grossed.
Interesting about this movie?
Yeah.
It was in theaters for 3 weeks. I saw it twice. Once on opening night.
You did? You actually got to see
did.
it in the theater during its original theatrical run.
I saw it opening night. I had the day off of work. I was so excited for a new David Lynch movie.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So it grossed a whole $3.8 million, and apparently some of that was Zan's money.
Yeah, about $12 was my money, because I was in college back then, so I know I paid student discount ticket prices.
Right. Flash the student ID, that kind of thing. Yep, we all did. From a budget of $15 million, so essentially a third, just under a third, really, of that production budget. And this movie is essentially the first of 3 David Lynch films set in Los Angeles, followed by Mulholland Drive, which we've talked about, in 2001, and Inland Empire, which we haven't yet, on 2006. So it's kind of like this LA trilogy that David Lynch does. And the films, they kind of have a lot of similar themes in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Themes of there seems to be this running theme of identity that pours through all 3 of these films.
Yes, definitely. And we have all these films where someone starts out as one person and becomes another person.
Right.
In this movie, we have that literally and figuratively, where somebody just becomes another actual person. You go from Bill
There's
Pullman,
like an actual physical transformation.
right.
Yeah.
Whereas in Mulholland Drive, you have Naomi Watts she's the same person, it's just a different life.
Right.
So it's different.
Yeah, she goes through the mystery box and then boop.
Yeah,
reality shifts.
She's somebody different.
Essentially, we're on an alternate Earth. Yeah.
And Charles, I know you're really, really worried about this, but I have rectified this problem. I now have.
Okay.
In a couple of days, I will have This Mortal Coil record.
The collection is whole.
Yeah, I don't know if you're in. I mean, this Motor Coil did. They're an interesting group. They were, part of the whole 4AD record label. There's all like this particular song that I'm talking about is sung by Elizabeth Fraser from Cocteau Twins. So,
Okay.
and they do some good covers of some big star songs. So, I highly recommend this Motor Coil to
I'll
anybody.
have to check that out. All right.
Yeah,
Good. Thanks for the recommendation.
yeah, there you go.
All right. David Lynch came across the phrase "Lost Highway" while reading the book Night People, 1992, from Barry Gifford. Go figure. And
Oh,
because
hearing about this guy.
yeah, so because Lynch knew Gifford, because hey, they just made Wild at Heart from his book,
Mm-hmm.
he told him that he loved the phrase as the title for the movie, and they agreed to write a screenplay together. They each had their own different ideas of what Lost Highway should be, and they rejected all of them.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Lost Highway was also partially inspired by, the O.J. Simpson murder case, which, if you recall, because I certainly do, I remember watching it, and which involved the pursuit and arrest of O.J. Simpson, who denied killing somebody.
I was listening to Nick Kroll and John Mulaney doing their bit where they're the two old guys.
Right.
And they're talking about O.J. Simpson. And then Ford stopped making the Bronco. Can you imagine doing something so effed up that they stopped making the Toyota Camry? Like, that's how bad it was. Ford had to literally stop making a model of their car because O.J. was so terrible.
Yeah. I have to think that the final shot in the movie where Bill Pullman is getting chased by a bunch of cop cars is like, that's right there from taken from OJ's pursuit by the LAPD.
Oh, where
the freeway chase. The freeway chase. Yes.
Yeah, it just is at night instead of like in the middle of the afternoon. Which
right, exactly. Yeah.
I believe, Charles, that still holds the record, if not the highest. It's in the top 5.
Mm-hmm.
Most busiest pizza delivery times in the history of pizza delivery.
Yeah, I think I remember hearing something about that.
Yeah, like the most
because
pizzas
everybody
were ordered
was
for delivery during the OJ chase.
Right. All you childrens out there, you probably don't remember this because you're too young, but those of us of the Gen X persuasion, we are very familiar with this. And we remember that the nation was like glued to the television set as this was going on. This was a big deal back in the day.
The juice was loose, is what they
the
called it.
The juice was loose, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and those of us, remember like, oh my God, O.J. Simpson from the Naked Gun movies, or playing for the Buffalo Bills,
or those Samsonite luggage commercials.
Yeah, exactly.
Or no, was it Samsonite or was it no, it was Hertz Rent-A-Car, or was it?
It was Hertz Rent-A-Car.
I don't know. I just remember him running through it. He was running through an airport with
luggage. He was running through an
Maybe
airport. It's Hertz Rent-A-Car. Trust me. Yes.
Yeah, it's Hertz Rent-A-Car. That's right. Yeah.
Or if you're a comic book geek, you remember him from the Dingo Boot ads on the backs of comic books back in the 80s.
Oh my God.
There's a little bit of obscure trivia for you.
Yeah.
So,
oh, gracious.
Don't ask me how that stuck in my head, but it did. The film's opening scene, where Fred Madison hears the words "Dick Laurent is dead" over the intercom, was inspired by an incident an incident that happened to David Lynch at his own house. And because
interestingly enough, Charles.
Yes.
Fred and Renee's house.
Right.
Is David
Lynch's house. Yes. Yes. So if you ever want to know what David Lynch's house looks like, that's what it looks like.
There you go, sport. And it looks amazing, and I want all the furniture in it.
Right. Now, I kind of wondered if the interiors were in a studio somewhere.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because maybe he wouldn't want to show off at the inside of what his house looks like.
I also really, really hope that David Lynch does not have a VCR that does not fit on the freaking shelf that he puts it on. It bothers me so much that VCR stereo equipment or whatever it is, that piece of component equipment sticks out about 2 inches off of the shelf. That drives me nuts every time I watch this movie. Like, get another.
Now, of course, being Ghost with the Twin Peaks podcast, I would be remiss if, while we're on the subject, I didn't mention that the lamp in that living room is the lamp from the Black Lodge. I'm telling you.
Yeah, and what happens to Fred when he has his nightmares and he's walking through the hallway?
Right.
What does he see? Red curtains.
It's true. Curtains definitely do play a part in this, yes.
Yeah, he has his nightmares about killing Renee, and he's walking through his house or what he thinks is his house, and all of a sudden he's in a corridor of red curtains.
All right.
Yeah.
So, but apparently David Lynch's house was next to actor David Lander's house.
Oh,
and
I know who that is.
Yeah, so we just talked about David Lander not too long ago when we talked Wounds and Scars, because he obviously recently passed and played Tim Pinkle on Twin Peaks. And, of course, Squiggy on Laverne and Shirley, among other things.
Mm-hmm.
And because both men have the same name, the same first name, Lynch thought the stranger must have got the wrong house.
Oh.
So that's what inspired him for the Dick Laurent is dead intercom bit.
All right.
Which obviously bookends the entire film in this. It helped creates that loop that brings everything literally almost full circle in this movie.
Yeah.
So Lynch cast Bill Pullman because he was a friend and neighbor of his as the film's central character. So again, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
It's who you know. Yep.
It's who you know. Actress Patricia Arquette agreed to be cast as Renee and Alice because she was interested in portraying a sexually desirable and dangerous woman, which is a role that, for some ungodly reason, she had never done before.
Yeah, that's true. She hadn't done that yet. And because she was always very quirky girl next door type, very much like her character in Ed Wood.
Right. Yeah, I agree. She does have, as Renee, I got a little bit of a Betty Page vibe from her.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of wonder if that was intentional. Actor Balthazar Getty was chosen for the role of Pete Dayton after David Lynch saw a picture of him in a magazine and said, "He's the guy for the job."
This is the guy?
This is the guy. Yeah, basically. Yeah. So essentially Lynch saw him in a magazine and said, okay, this guy's. So essentially it's David Lynch doing a headshot and looking at a guy in a magazine and casting somebody.
I'm just seeing David Lynch like in a director's chair, turning around, looking over his shoulder and seeing just like Justin Theroux does in
Right. Yeah, there's probably some little truth in that, I'm guessing. Actor Robert Blake was cast as the mystery man because Lynch liked his previous work and was always interested in working with him. Although Robert Blake didn't understand the script at all, Blake was the one responsible for the look and style of the mystery man.
You would never know that he didn't understand it because he's perfect.
Right. And Lynch told him, use your imagination for the look. So Blake decided, okay, I'm going to cut my hair short, part it in the middle, and apply white kabuki makeup on my face.
Yeah.
Then he put on a black outfit and then showed Lynch his look, and Lynch is like, I love it.
It's the best eye makeup that David Lynch loves that isn't green.
Right. But yeah, I thought it was kind of trivial. I was like, okay, you would think Lynch would have designed that character, but no, it was Robert Blake who came up with that.
Robert Blake is perfect. Right.
So it's nice and creepy, right up Robert Blake's alley, apparently. Who knew? Actor Robert Loggia, who was apparently interested in playing the role of Frank Booth in Blue Velvet, was cast as Mr. Eddie in Dick Laurent. And Lynch recalled that apparently upon learning of Dennis Hopper's casting as Booth, Robert Loggia went into this big profanity-laden rant at him. We're going to do it live, that kind of rant, which would apparently, that was the inspiration for Mr. Eddie's road rage scene.
That's amazing.
Right?
I'm trying, I think.
Is that great? Isn't that a great bit of trivia?
That's a great bit of trivia, and I'm starting to think about, oh boy.
Can you imagine Robert Loggia as Frank Booth in Blue Velvet after Dennis Hopper?
I'm trying to, and I think, oh boy.
You would have played it totally differently, though. More like a mobster.
More like a monster and less like a psychopath, like a pure psychopath.
Yeah.
You know what I would have loved to have seen, though?
What?
Robert Loggia as Ben. I mean, think of him with, like, you know, roughly tux.
Yeah.
And makeup and doing the lip syncing with the light. Yeah. I think.
Right.
That would have been really interesting, but I just don't think anybody could do.
I could see it because Robert Loggia does have a flair for comedy, so I could kind of see him doing that.
Yeah, but I feel like you see Robert Loggia and you're already like, okay, that guy,
yeah,
he's mobbed up. You see Dennis Hopper and you think, oh my God, somebody bring the pets inside. He's so perfectly psychotic that I just think that I think this is definitely the better choice for Robert Loggia. This way.
I agree. I agree with you. Especially, it's kind of hard to say, oh, he would have been better than Dennis Hopper, because Dennis Hopper as Frank Booth is iconic, right?
Oh, he's absolutely iconic. Like, you know, like I said, that's like saying somebody else would have been better at Agent Cooper.
Right. I was just going to make that comparison. You know,
Agent Cooper. Kyle MacLachlan was born to play Agent Cooper, and end of story. Yeah.
Or somebody being better at Pete Martell than Jack Nance.
Or better at Henry Spencer.
Yeah.
You know, that there's, or.
But somebody better than Miguel Ferrer as Albert Rosenfeld.
Or somebody other than. I mean, I know that this is, you know, we're probably going to see this at some point, but it's a tough act to follow to be Hannibal Lecter when you're not Anthony Hopkins.
Well, to be fair, what's his name? I'm blanking on the actor's name. What is the actor's name? Hold on. Let me think about this. Obviously, I'm going to have to edit this part out because I'm totally blanking on this. Mads Mikkelsen was fantastic as Dr. Lecter.
No, he's fantastic, but
he plays it a completely different way than Anthony Hopkins. That's who I was thinking of.
But if you made me pick Anthony Hopkins,
right?
I mean, I love Mads. I love Rogue One. I love Casino Royale. I love Mads. He's fantastic. But he's almost a different guy in my mind. Like, it's like there's another psychotic psychologist in Baltimore.
Right. Yeah.
So,
but my point was that, you know, like, you had somebody who could be an effective replacement that you would have loved. An effective replacement, but in a completely different way.
But
it's not as good. In a
completely different way. Yeah.
Yeah, because obviously everyone's going to associate Anthony Hopkins with the role of Dr. Lecter, regardless of how good Mads is, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, but anyway, all right. So the movie, this is where things get tricky. Talking about this movie.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how to approach this apart from chronologically as far as the movie goes. Because essentially,
so the movie.
Yes.
The movie
I can set it up, but
the movie is essentially about the woman. And
or women.
Well,
Yeah,
Patricia Arquette is the center of this movie.
right. She's the femme fatale, like I said, in this
Absolutely,
movie.
for sure. And I'm not I'm not necessarily convinced that they're not the same woman on different planes of
Yeah,
existence, because they both meet, what's his name, Andy, at a place called Moke's, and
right,
about a job, and they both are the downfall of both of our main male characters.
right. But are they?
So,
The question is though, Fred, or excuse me, um, Pete sees a picture of both of them in a photo at
uh-huh.
one point, but
Yeah,
everybody else sees it as only one woman, Renee.
right, right. They only see Renee.
So the question is, was since you brought it up, was Alice completely imagined because of Pete's mental illness?
See, that's a good question. And what is Pete's connection to Bill Pullman?
Right.
How does he become Bill Pullman, yet fall into the same trap as Bill Pullman? Now, we actually don't know why or if Bill Pullman actually kills Renee. We see him
It's
watching the videotape,
right.
and you see Renee dismembered on the bed. I mean, it's bad. It's gruesome.
Yeah. There's kind of a time jump
Yeah.
because
And all of a sudden,
he's
he's dead.
watching he's sitting there watching the tape, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden time just kind of skips for a moment, and then all of a sudden
Uh-huh.
he's being interrogated, and then all of a sudden Fred is being interrogated by the cops
Right.
for and he's going, please tell me I didn't kill her.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And he's Fred is kind of an Andy Dufresne character. You're never sure if he did it or
Right.
not.
Even
And
he's not sure.
even though we're pretty sure Andy Dufresne did not kill his wife. But if that's the case, then how does Fred manifest in the end of the movie?
Right. Because he
And
comes back.
it all has to do with the mystery man. The mystery man and the woman are the ones that connect the two different realities.
Right. Now the question is, did the mystery man cause the transformation from Fred to Pete, or because apparently Fred had to get out of prison somehow.
Yeah, right. But so where did Fred go in the time between him turning into Balthazar Getty and then him
Right.
showing up and killing Dick Laurent?
See, I'd argue that Fred didn't go anywhere because he did transform,
Right. He's
but
still the same
essentially,
guy.
essentially, essentially, he's the same guy. But Fred, the identity of Fred was replaced by Pete's identity,
Right.
even though it was the
Right.
same guy physically.
I can see that. Yeah, I can totally see that. And so it's
It's like for whatever
that's
reason, the mystery man was able to replace Fred with Pete, and then at that particular moment in time, and the question is why, we don't know. Why did he come back and
right.
replace Pete
Why
in
do
the
you come back
desert?
to replace Pete? What does Renee / Alice have to do with it? Are they just there to make sure he does the bidding of the mystery man? Is and that's probably why this movie only made $3 million, because
Right. It's very hard to figure out for a lot of people.
Blue Velvet is weird, but it's
Yeah.
linear.
Yeah.
It's very linear. Kid's father has a stroke. He has to come home, run the business. He finds an ear. He finds out there's a seedy side to town. He finds
Right.
out that there's a singer whose kid has been kidnapped by these seedy people, and he tries to help her.
Yeah.
That's a linear story. This is an incredibly nonlinear story that you just have to sort of, and the same thing with Mulholland Drive, but I would say Mulholland Drive is a better movie than this one is. As much as I like this movie,
Oh, I
Mulholland
agree. I
Drive
totally
is
agree with
better.
that. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
I agree.
Um,
This one, instead of being linear, this one is essentially circular
it's
because
circular, exactly.
it falls back on itself because that bit at the beginning, the whole thing that drives this
The first
is
and
the
last
first
lines
scene,
of this movie are the same.
right? Because Fred is inside, he hears over the intercom, he hears this voice say Dick Laurent is dead, and then by the end of the movie, it's revealed that Fred is the one who said that to himself.
Right.
So did Fred time travel?
Fred and Pete are two halves of the same person, and they
Right,
don't necessarily exist on the same plane. They exist
right,
on the same time period, but not on the same plane. Same
right.
way with Renee and Alice. The only one that can transcend it all is the Mystery Man. That's how he
Right.
can be in two places at once.
But I'm kind of wondering. It's like, so is it time travel that's involved here, or is it an alternate Earth that where Fred, the Fred at the end of the film, crosses over into the Fred at the beginning of the film,
Right. It's
and
the
it's
zone.
it's yeah, it's the zone.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's the zone. It's not timey-wimey, it's the zone.
right.
And the Mystery Man is what holds it all together. And even Fred talks about how he doesn't like to he doesn't like videotape because he doesn't like to remember. He likes to remember things his own way,
Yeah,
the way he remembers them, not necessarily the way they happen.
right.
So something's up with Fred. Fred has a perception. I think we're setting up from very early. We're setting up Fred to have from the get-go to have a skewed perception of reality in the first
Yeah.
place.
Well, I mean, he talks about he has these headaches,
Mm-hmm.
and he doesn't remember killing Renee.
Right.
So
And there is that scene where he's screaming and you can see that his head and
yeah,
his face is
is
deforming.
physically transforming. Yeah, at the end of the
Yeah.
movie. So
Right.
he's sitting in the car, he's getting chased by the cops, and then all of a sudden we see him transforming,
Right.
like he presumably did in the prison. Now the question is,
Exactly.
what
Because
does
that
he
happened.
become? Does he become? And we don't know this.
Right.
The question is, does he become Pete again, or does he become someone else entirely?
Right. I don't, yeah, we have no idea.
We
And
don't.
I don't even think Fred knows who he is because, like I said, Fred chooses to remember things the way he chooses to remember them, not
Right.
necessarily the way they happen. So who knows? That's the thing about a David Lynch movie is you have to just watch it and say, oh damn,
Yeah.
can't you can't find a lot of meaning and hidden clues and things like that. It's all about the imagery and the mentality of what it's like to be. It's almost like there's two halves of one person that are in love with the two halves of another person.
Right.
You've got Fred in love with Renee and you have Pete in love with Alice, and
Who presumably are the same woman.
presumably are the same woman. You've got the photo of both of them and then the photo of just one of them. And what's interesting is that when there's just one photo, it's Renee. It's not
Right.
Alice. So
that's why I kind of wonder if in his mental state, if Pete hallucinated Alice,
see, I wonder that too, but at the same time,
or was Alice essentially Renee in disguise?
I always felt like Alice was sort of Renee in disguise, or the other half of Renee,
Right.
because Mr. Eddie sees Renee.
Right. We know that they're involved, and
Right.
that's why he ends up threatening Pete, going like,
Mm-hmm.
if I ever saw anybody with her, I'd be really upset. Hint,
I would
hint.
shove this gun so far up his ass it would come out his mouth.
Right. Right. Know what I mean? Know what I mean? Say no more. Yeah.
So I feel like if there were more, if Renee had been less visible to other people,
Right.
I think that would make, I don't know. I don't know if Alice is imaginary or if I feel like both Alice and Renee are like harbingers of bad things.
Well, I think that's it's very symbolic because, essentially being a neo-noir film here, she's the cause of all, both Pete and Fred's troubles in a lot of
Both of them,
ways
yeah.
because part of the Fred's problem is that Renee is being unfaithful to him. We find out that, he's playing the saxophone in the club and he wants her to come down and she's like, no, 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 I got something else going on or
I'm gonna
whatever. And
stay
she
home
makes
and
an
read.
excuse. That's
Yeah.
it. Yeah. And then there's another scene where we see her in the club, but then she's like talking to some other guys. I think Andy.
Yeah, it's Andy. Now, is that same night or is he remembering how he met her?
That's a good question. Because
Yeah.
obviously it was kind of implied, because when they go to the party held by Andy,
Uh-huh.
Renee says, okay, why don't you go get me a drink? And you notice it was kind of like Andy is being really touchy-feely with Renee. So it kind of was
Yeah.
implied that they were involved on the side. She was cheating on him
Well,
with
and
her.
you get the feeling too about,
With Andy, I mean. Yeah.
yeah, I feel like he that's another reason why maybe Bill Pullman is a little bit better for this role than I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
But she has a past that he doesn't know about or he doesn't quite get or that was completely not his scene.
Right.
Because you have that scene where they're at Andy's party and you can tell he doesn't really want to be there. He doesn't know these people. This is not his scene. He,
But he doesn't really find out about it until he transforms into Pete.
I don't want to say he's square.
He's
He's
not
not like,
dialed in.
he's just not, he's not into this like hookers and porn stars world. He's a musician,
Right.
so he is just not really interested. And so she's a little tipsy. She's kind of hanging on to Andy. You can tell they've been friends for a while. And when they're in the car on the way home, that's when he's like, how do you know this asshole Andy? And she's like, we met at a place called Moke's. He offered me a job, the exact same thing that Alice tells Pete. And I just love Bill pointing like, yeah, he's got some friends because that's how he meets the mystery man. So I just I wasn't sure if he saw if that was him seeing her at the club or with Andy or him remembering when he first met her, because I have a feeling he met her in his wheelhouse as opposed to
Right.
being into her wheelhouse. So I get the feeling that that's how they met rather than that was that night. But there's
Okay.
something up with her because she says she's going to stay home and read and he calls her and she doesn't answer the phone. But when he gets home, she's just asleep in bed.
Right. Another thing I was kind of pondering about this movie, Pete's parents, because there seemed to be kind of an implication here that Pete was taken away by some supernatural means,
Mm-hmm.
presumably by the mystery man.
Okay.
And Pete's parents aren't talking about it.
Something's up with Pete because Pete's been missing for a while
Right.
and they're like, yeah, you really need to tell us what the heck has been going on.
Right.
Like, where have you been? What's been going on? How did this happen? Like, what's up? You know? So Pete, you get the feeling that Pete had this sort of normal life with a bunch of like dumbass, no good friends, like Scott Coffey and Giovanni Ribisi and,
Right.
that he's just, what does he have? Like some sort of juvenile for like Grand Theft Auto or something.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's just kind of a suburban bored kid and he has a sort of on again, off again girlfriend who is Natasha Gregson Wagner. But then when Alice comes into the picture, he kind of just forgets all about it. And then she sort of figures out that he's, running around on her and
Right.
some other woman and starts yelling at him. And so that's after Alice.
Essentially they break up. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause I mean, he's being followed by the police and they're like, this guy gets so many women. Like, how is this happening? Like, they don't quite understand.
Well, it's kind of interesting because there's like two sets of detectives. Two detectives following Fred and two detectives following Pete.
Right.
Two different ones.
Yeah.
And then all four of them are in the same room at the end.
At Andy's house when Andy's head is in.
Right. When they find his body. Right. When they find his body.
And that's when they see the photo of Mr. Eddie / Dick Laurent, Andy, and just Renee. We only have Renee. So
you can almost kind of picture this movie starting off with Pete.
Mm-hmm.
And, he goes through the whole thing with Alice, finds out that, she's involved in porn and all that, and that Dick Laurent is, Mr. Eddie, or vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
And because, he's, so hung up on Alice, he ends up taking Mr. Eddie out to the desert, kills him.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, that would be where he becomes maybe as almost like an alternate persona. He becomes Fred. And so he transforms into Fred and gets pursued by the cops at the end of the movie.
Right, in their chase, their O.J. Simpson chase.
Right. Yeah. So the only part that I run into this problem is obviously the time loop where Fred tells himself about that Dick Laurent is dead.
Yeah. Yeah. So
because essentially in this, it almost feels like the beginning of this movie is actually the end of the movie chronologically.
It is. Yeah. It's a complete and total loop.
Right.
The first line in this movie is the last line in this.
Did any of that make sense? Because if so, repeat it back to me so that maybe I understand it this time.
Yeah, write to us and explain how that makes sense because neither one of us is particularly sure how that works.
Right. I kind of feel like I should be doing this on Drunk Cinema and drinking while I'm explaining this.
Well, Charles, full disclosure, I had a beer and it's not helping.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Good to know. Good to know.
It doesn't help to.
Right.
No, this is just David Lynch making a visual film about different halves of the psyche.
Yeah.
And
I mean, you could interpret this film so many different ways.
Yeah.
Is Pete completely insane? And then he imagined like the mystery man. He could imagine Alice. He imagined himself as Fred.
Mm-hmm.
Or is there's a lot more going on? Or is it just there's something supernatural going on?
Or is Fred completely insane and him turning into Pete in prison is like a whole occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge kind of a thing?
Yeah.
You don't know. That's the thing.
There's no real answer here that we get. And maybe that's part of my frustration with this movie. A little bit. I get it because I've watched enough David Lynch.
I was going to say, I feel like I would be frustrated.
I know how to enjoy the ride.
Yeah. I feel like I'd be frustrated if it was anybody else. If it was any other
director,
like some amateur who thinks he can make some sort of non-linear movie that is actually enjoyable.
Right. Some poser. Yeah.
Some poser. If it was some poser, I might agree with you, but I'm not unsatisfied with this movie because the characters are so interesting.
Right.
That, regardless of what they throw at you, we have interesting characters. You've got and the least interesting characters are our two main killers. Fred and Pete are our least interesting.
Right.
But
they're essentially, they're
the catalyst for the.
They're the catalyst. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'd also argue that Alice is the catalyst as well.
Yeah. Alice is for sure. But yeah, definitely I think they both of these guys get into trouble with the same femme fatale, just different sides of the same femme fatale.
Right.
And I would frankly,
Maybe it's kind of like the same story being told twice.
yeah, yeah, that this is
Because,
how,
you have a guy that is involved with somebody and then ends up being
mhm,
attracted to somebody else, and who
right,
turns out to be this femme fatale who has, a very shady background and knows very shady people,
and no very shady people.
and it essentially gets him in trouble
Yeah, gets him killed.
because he's thinking with his junk.
Yeah, if I had the trust of a mob boss,
Right.
yeah, I don't know if I would screw that up for just, a woman who
Well,
is interested in finding that. And that's another really, really interesting scene is, like I said, the scene where they're having sex in the desert
yeah,
and Pete just keeps saying, I want you, I want you. And then she just whispers, you'll never have me.
right. Shuts him down.
And that is,
So essentially, almost like maybe she was a fantasy.
I think that goes for both Renee and Alice. So I think both of them are always going to be at arm's length for both of those guys. Even
Right.
though she's married to Fred, they don't seem particularly close or loving with each other,
No, they don't.
and that just could be because we don't get enough of them or that's their personality. But, even that scene where she comes to bed and she's naked and they have sex and it's really bad sex.
Right. Well, I kind of wondered about that because he's, got something. I don't know if it's maybe the headaches or what else, or he's not able to perform, and she kind of gives him that real kind of like tries to.
She gives him what I refer to as the condescending pat.
That's exactly what it is. Yes.
It's
Yeah.
sort of like, okay, it's okay.
Yeah. It's fine. Right. Trying to massage his fragile male ego.
His fragile ego. Yeah, exactly. So, and even their sex is very awkward. Like
Yeah.
she comes to bed, she's naked, and he doesn't really say anything, and she gets under the covers like, okay, go to sleep now. Let's pretend like it's bedtime.
Right.
And then he just sort of rolls on her. Like they don't seem to be a very communicative couple. And so,
Well, you brought up the curtains earlier.
mhm,
Now that we're on that, something I thought was interesting was, he gets up from the bed, and she asks, where did you go?
yeah,
Like he disappears literally into the shadows.
it's like the hallway of the house. It's pitch black. It's terrifying.
Right, exactly. It's like, you think you'd have at least a nightlight on or something so you don't stumble into the wall,
Right?
but
She's like,
but
Fred,
it but it,
where
but
are
it's solid black.
you? Show me where you're scaring me, Fred. Where are you?
Right, and then when he emerges, comes right back out, he's got a completely different look on his face.
Yeah, it's like Bob came back out instead of Fred.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So maybe at that point Pete was born.
Well, maybe, but I feel like Pete is just as naive as
If
Fred.
he had kind of a psychotic break, I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
I feel like but I almost feel like I don't think Pete is a murderer himself either. I
Okay,
something about the women bring out the psychosis in those guys, both guys.
right, right,
I mean, like I said, it's not like Pete is a Bob type of a character. Pete is just some dumbass kid, you know.
yeah. Well, the vibe I get with Pete, he's almost like a patsy. That because Alice wants what's his name dead, Andy dead,
Hmm.
so that they can rob him apparently.
So they can rob him and they can go in the. Okay, exactly. Who is a fence that lives in the middle of a desert in a cabin? Where is he going to come up with the money that you need to get
Right,
passports in a cabin in the middle of the desert? I mean, come on,
right.
Alice, get in the game.
Well, again, Pete should have realized this going in. It's like, why are we going out to the middle of the desert of all places?
Anytime a woman says, "Okay, I'll have sex with this guy," you sneak
Right,
in and bash him over the head.
right.
You break up with her.
Yes, yes.
That's
Again,
only advice for people. You break
but
up
the
with someone
problem,
who said stuff like that to you.
but unfortunately, guys are very dumb, very, very dumb about this
I guess, but it's like,
when a woman is involved.
but do guys really think that there's never going to be another pair of nice boobies ever in their lives?
Guys are all about the now. They don't think long term. Little
I guess.
insight.
I guess. That makes sense.
Guys are just like, I want this. I want her. And even
Yeah.
Pete says this. Like I want you. So he's
Guess
desperate to have her.
I guess
And
this is what I'm doing.
right, exactly. So he's
Well, it's
just like,
that
yeah, whatever.
that whole
It's,
concept
it's,
of
it's just like it's like that libido overrides all common sense
I
at this point. And I
there
get
there
that you're a woman and you probably can't grasp that, but as a guy, I totally get that.
okay, what woman on this planet would make you hit somebody over the head and rob them?
None. But
See? There. That's what I'm saying.
but but I get it. I don't say I agree with it. I said I understand it.
I mean, I guess I don't understand, like,
Because my
and
point is like as a guy in college. Let me give you an example.
all right, I
So
want to
like
hear the story.
my girlfriend in college. I'm gonna have to do this really quickly because we were talking a lot, and my voice is starting to go. But I was involved with this girl, and I wanted to spend all my time with her. And we would stay out late till 3 o'clock in the afternoon or in the evening. I mean, and it just became this like I got to the point. We were spending so much time together, and things started falling by the wayside. And I got all
Like your
like
grades.
well, just studies and just like I was exhausted because I wasn't getting enough sleep. And my parents said like at one point they like, "Are you doing drugs?" And at that point, I kind of maybe like reevaluate the relationship and like maybe this isn't the healthiest relationship for me.
Okay. Okay.
So essentially, I can understand that the stupidity that you're not really seeing the way you're acting in the
Right.
practicality of it.
But I feel like let's murder this guy and steal
Yes,
his watch and go to a
right.
friend.
Yeah,
For most people should be enough to be like, okay,
yes.
hang on a
I
second.
agree. I agree. But
Now,
this is a David Lynch film, so
yeah, and this, and Pete is not the brightest bulb, I don't think.
right.
You
And
know,
if in noir films, this kind of thing happens where you've got this really attractive woman, the guy falls for her, is willing to kill for her.
right, and I've never, and
That's the trope. That's the trope.
that's the trope. I mean, that's double indemnity. That's all,
Yeah, right.
postman always rings twice. I mean, you take your pick. But
Regardless of the sanity of it.
regardless of the sanity of it, but we also have in film noir people like Sam Spade,
Right.
who's not going to play the sap for you.
Yeah.
Okay. And he's not gonna deal with this kind of thing. And I always find it, and maybe you're right. Maybe this is a feminine perspective. I'm the type of person that is like, wow, the writing is bad in this porno. Like,
Right. Right.
too many
Yeah.
outside,
Right.
it, outside influences, take me out of certain things.
The moment.
Like the VCR in this movie, how it doesn't
Yeah.
fit on the shelf. That drives me
Right.
crazy.
So
And I
essentially you
fixate.
fixate on
Yeah,
something. Yeah.
I fixate on things like that. But you would think that, hey, if we kill this guy, we can get some money and we can run away together. It's like, all right, dude, you know the story of Bonnie and Clyde. You know the story of Charlie Starkweather and Carol Ann Fugate.
Right.
This lasts for maybe a month. Like, this is not a good idea. This is never a good idea. And so I always just find that so interesting. There's never been, like, I remember listening to I don't remember which podcast it was. I want to say it was Criminal,
Okay.
about a woman who was doing some volunteer work at a prison with, like, prisoners and rehabilitation through helping take care of puppies. Like, they take care
Yeah.
of dogs, they rehabilitate dogs and like help train them to be service animals. And she falls in love with this prisoner. And he convinces her to spring him from jail. And I'm just like, where do you think you're going to go?
Right.
Do you really think that you can just, move him into your house and no one's going to notice? And just find a job anywhere now that you are wanted by everyone? Like,
Right.
how does this work? Or even somebody like, not to speak ill of the dead, but somebody like Mary Kay Letourneau. Like, what universe do you see this ending well?
Right. Yeah. Well, see, it's not just guys then making bad decisions.
No, it's not. It's
It's
definitely,
people. It's people.
there are, Carla Homolka.
Love makes people do really stupid things sometimes.
Carla Homolka is another one that sticks in my mind of, are you freaking kidding me?
Right.
Like, do you know who that is?
No, I don't.
She and her boyfriend, Paul Bernardo, were these infamous murderers in Canada where they kidnapped teenage girls, raped them, tortured them, and then killed them.
Right.
And he was very, very controlling, and she had terrible self-esteem and just was like, he was everything to her. And he decided he wanted a virgin, so she was going to give him her little sister for his birthday. Her little sister who was like 13 or 14.
Nice.
So they chloroform her, but they use too much and she dies. Right. And then they start to figure out who these people are. But yeah, she just got wrapped up in this guy, and I can't imagine. And I guess, Chris always tells me that it's probably good that we can't understand that.
Right, because then you don't do it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you don't do that kind of stuff. But it's
if
like,
you don't think along those lines, you're much better off. Yes.
Yeah, but the second somebody says, come over to this guy's house, I'll be having sex with him, and then when I'm done, he'll come downstairs and you murder him. That's when I'm like, I'll just get a second job. I mean, this is.
Yeah. So essentially, it's this movie showcases the dangers of obsession.
Absolutely, the dangers of obsession.
Because otherwise, if you're not paying attention, you can end up being transformed into somebody else entirely, and sent to prison.
Sent to prison, and then you change back, and then you kill a bunch of people.
Right. And then you get chased by the cops, and then in a big endless circular loop.
I want to know.
Almost like you're in hell.
Almost like you're in hell. Yeah.
Which is another way you can almost approach this movie, is that
totally
the mystery man is the devil.
Oh yeah, you could very much look at it that way.
And puts Pete/Fred through this eternal torment.
Yeah. And that's something about what the mystery man says, is that, what are you doing in my house? You invited me. It is not my custom to go where I am not wanted. And They always say, you have to invite the devil in.
Yeah.
The devil's there waiting, and if you got to invite him in for him to be able to have power over you. So
yeah, unless he's Dracula too. Dracula, same thing.
Yeah, you got to let vampires in. you got to tell them it's okay to come in the house.
Right.
So you shouldn't have a senior prom, because if there are vampires for seniors, they're all invited anyway. So.
Very nice. Very nice. All right. I know we're talking in a very circular fashion, so I guess that's kind of fitting for this movie that we're talking.
There's really not a good.
We're kind of talking in circles a little bit, but
there's not a good way to talk about this movie linearly.
No, there's not.
Guy goes and plays the saxophone, calls his wife, she's not home. He comes home, she's asleep, she wakes up, gets the paper, there's a videotape. That happens for a couple of nights in a row. Finally, there's a videotape where he's murdering her. He goes to prison, he turns into Balthazar Getty, and then, it's better to talk about this movie in concepts than it is in plotline.
Right. I agree with you on this one. Yeah. Because normally, I like to go through the movie, step by step as we go through it. But this movie, I don't think you can do that.
No. The only one that we really want to make sure that people, if this movie's too weird for you, if you're not a big fan of it, just at least go to YouTube and watch Robert Loggia scream at the tailgating guy because it's the
Right.
greatest thing ever.
It's that scene alone. You can isolate it, and it's a
Yeah.
fantastic moment.
It's what we've
And
all wanted to do. What we've all wanted to yell at somebody.
It's very cathartic, that scene.
Yes, cathartic is the perfect term.
Right, because it's like your ultimate road rage fantasy come to life.
Yeah, yeah.
The guy that cut you off, the woman on the phone that isn't paying attention to rear end you, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and you just happen to be in a car with your two goons, and you can cut somebody off and yank them out by their shirt and scream at them about how it takes
pistol whip them and leave them by the side of the road.
Stop.
Yeah.
If I had made a sudden stop, you would have effing hit me. So it's extremely cathartic. It's like watching Judge Judy yell at idiots.
Right.
It's the same concept.
Yeah, I agree. All right. What's your rating for this film?
This one gets a 7.5 VCRs that don't quite fit on the shelf.
Okay. You really did fixate on that a little bit.
It bothers me, so I can't even begin to tell you how things like this will get stuck in my craw and bother me. Like, okay, do you know, have I told you my Amelie story yet?
Yes, you have. You've told me that story.
Where I couldn't relax until I made up a reason about how she could afford that apartment, even though she
worked you did tell me that story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Things like that get stuck in my craw, and they knock me right out of a story sometimes.
I get it. Well, I'm slightly under you. I give this one 7 out of 10. Desert cabins burning in reverse.
Ooh, good one.
Thank you. Yeah, because it's obviously David Lynch. He loves to play with the camera tricks. So essentially, he takes a building, he kind of blows it up and it catches on fire.
Yep.
But Lynch, he reverses it, so it looks like the smoke is going back into the cabin, and the cabin reforms.
Right. It's as a visual, it looks like it's straight out of The Return.
Right. It would be very fitting for Twin Peaks: The Return. I agree.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, why the cabin does this, we don't know.
Nope.
Or is it just more of Pete/Fred's mental state?
Well, I think the cabin is unstable when everybody comes together.
Okay.
All
right. Well, that's my thing. We didn't get any Ghostwood mail, sadly.
Oh, come on. Just say hi.
Come on, guys. Yeah, just say hi. Let us know what you're thinking about these reviews, because I know people are listening to them, so I want to get your thoughts. Or, hey, if you got any thoughts about what we should be talking about on Ghostwood, we'd love to hear from you. So write to us, ghostwoodpodcast@gmail.com. That's ghostwoodpodcast@gmail.com. Find us on Twitter @GhostwoodCast on Twitter, or Ghostwood Twin Peaks Podcast on Facebook. And Zan, where can they find you and hear more about your Robert Loggia road rage fantasies?
Well, right now you're going to hear about how I think, men who use women's vulnerability to control them are absolute jerks.
Yes.
And you're going to hear how I am not sorry that people who are transphobic lose their jobs.
Yes. Or people that kind of associate victimhood with the Holocaust.
Yeah, people who think that being called out for their hateful statements is exactly the same as having your family rounded up, systematically tortured, systematically killed, and then
millions of people killed,
and then having the fillings removed from their teeth and melted into Nazi gold. Yeah, that's the same.
Yeah.
No, it's not. So you'll hear a little bit about that.
Which is why Gina Carano does not have a job anymore.
Right. She's not coming back.
Employed by Lucasfilm, yeah.
She's not coming back to Lucasfilm. And, long story short, she violated their social media clause.
Yeah. You have a code of conduct clause in your contract.
And when you violate a code of conduct to be hateful, people don't want a gray area. They don't want to hear your side of the story. So you can hear me talk about that kind of stuff. I am Udinax19 on Twitter and Instagram, and Zan Sprouse on Facebook. And you can hear me get even drunker and talk about movies with Charles on Drug Cinema. And you can hear me try to, keep myself together and discuss Oscar-winning movies on Gold Standard, the Oscars podcast, with DJ Nick and Rachel Friend and our various group of guests
Sounds like a plan. You guys should all do this. Do the thing.
Do the thing. What about you,
Do the
Charles?
thing. Well, of course, me at Charles Skaggs on Twitter, at Charles Skaggs on Facebook, and Charles Skaggs on Instagram, and my blog of geeky things. Do the thing.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn good coffee and hot, where I talk about all the stuff we talk about here in Ghostwood. So Twin Peaks stuff that comes around, David Lynch stuff with my other podcast for Southgate Media, including the aforementioned Drunk Cinema that I do with Zan, where we just finished talking Young Frankenstein, or Frankenstein, take your pick. And then soon we'll be talking here next week, we'll be discussing Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan.
So excited.
So that's going to be a fun one, I think.
I'm going to have to break out like the blue curacao and pretend that it's Romulan ale.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a must, right?
Yeah, that's a moral imperative.
I might have to do some food coloring for beer or something. I don't know.
Ooh, or you could get, Platform has that Blue Martian beer right now.
Okay. I'm not
I
familiar with
recommend
it.
that. It's pretty sweet, but it's pretty good.
All right. I have to do some shopping. All right. Alfred, let's go shopping, right?
I was just going to say, Alfred, let's go shopping. Yep.
Yeah. All right. And then on my other podcast, Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast, where right now Rachel Friend is sitting with Jesse Jackson and I as we're going through the Trial of a Time Lord season 23 of the classic Doctor Who.
She
from
loves her
1986.
some Colin Baker.
Yes, she does.
Yep.
For Rachel, if you know her, you know that all you have to do is say the magic words Colin Baker, and she appears just kind of like, maybe the Mystery Man or something like that. Just out of nowhere.
Imagine if Colin Baker came up to Rachel and said, I'm in your house, call me.
Right.
She would lose her damn mind.
Yes, she would. No, I'm already there. How did you do that?
I don't care. I'm coming home. I'll see you in a minute.
Yeah. You're right out the door.
There'd be like a Rachel shaped hole in the wall.
Right. Kind of like Roger Rabbit. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, totally.
And then also the Phantom Zone podcast they do with DJ Nick and Jesse Jackson, where we're talking WandaVision right now, which has been so much fun to talk about. Lots of great stuff. This show is getting more and more insane by the episode.
Oh my God. This last episode.
The potential of this show is amazing. What it could be.
Just the amount of Family Ties references.
Right.
In this last episode.
Or Growing Pains references.
Yeah, because when I first looked at the house, I'm like, Chris is like, is this supposed to be the Full House house? Because that would be freaking hilarious.
Well, there was a Full House nod. We talked about this on the podcast, where they're all kind of like running at the camera.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
That was right from the Full House credits.
That was Full House.
And if you remember, Elizabeth Olsen's sisters are Mary Kate and Ashley Olsen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at the house, and I'm realizing that the layout of the house is the Seavers house, but the stuff in the house is the Keaton's house. Like the sofa, the stained glass window on the landing of the stairway, even down to the Kiss the Cook sign in the kitchen.
But isn't the kitchen more Roseanne?
No, the kitchen's way bigger than that. Yeah.
Okay. It reminded me of the Roseanne kitchen.
It's a lot like the Family Ties kitchen where there's the island in the middle. But yeah, in Family Ties, they have a sign on their island that says Kiss the Cook.
Right.
And when I saw that, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah. So if you want more WandaVision discussion, you got to hop on over to the Phantom Zone, because this is the kind of stuff that we spend. And we haven't had Jesse on for the past couple episodes because of scheduling issues, like, oh, hey, Valentine's Day, that kind of thing. So we have to, so it's just Nick and I. And then because it's just Nick and I, we're like just getting really deep diving into the comic book stuff. So we're totally geeking out. It's a lot of fun. Check it out. And then I think that's it for now, because Titan Talk's on hiatus, but we'll get to that when they start making more episodes of Titans and Doom Patrol, so stay tuned for that, hopefully.
These two guys aren't reviewing Teen Titans on Cartoon Network. I really wish that show was better.
Yeah.
It's very disappointing.
It is very disappointing, yes. Yes, it is. All right, so next time on Ghostwood, episode 93, and Zan and I were trying to come up with ideas what we're going to do next. Since you guys aren't writing in, we want to hear your thoughts on what we should be doing.
This is going to be a very special episode, Charles.
Yes, on a very special episode, ... Oh, wait, that's WandaVision too, right?
Because what we're going to be discussing is the Straight Story.
Right.
Which neither of us have seen.
Yes. And so this is a David Lynch film neither of us have seen, and as the title implies, it's a straight story.
It's a
It's
true story. It's like a
nothing
based on a true
surreal.
story.
Yeah, it's David Lynch's film that, it's linear, presumably. It's coherent, presumably. So
Yeah.
this will be an interesting one.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And it's been
Wasn't
on
it
my
done?
list.
Wasn't it done for Disney?
Yeah, it's Disney.
So
You know?
essentially, it's David Lynch's Disney film, you guys.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of crazy. I mean, I have this
Right.
because Angelo.
The soundtrack, yeah.
Yeah,
For those who can't see in podcast land, it's the soundtrack.
yeah, but that's the thing. It was one of those that I'm like, oh yeah, I need to watch that. Oh yeah, I need to watch that. And it's just been pushed to the back burner for like 20 years at this point. Yeah.
Well, now here, 93 episodes later, we're going to finally talk about it. So
It's about time.
it's about time, right? We wanted to do Inland Empire, but hey, it's not available on home
Come
video.
on, Criterion.
Criterion, you're our only hope.
Criterion, give us a good U.S. Blu-ray release of Inland Empire, please.
Right. Make it happen. So we're going to talk the straight story. This should be a really interesting one to talk about here in a couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So brand new David Lynch for both of us. That
I
should
know,
be fun.
right?
All right. It's kind of exciting a little bit. All right, Zan, thank you so much. I had a ball talking with you tonight.
This was a good time, Charles.
We've talked
Yeah.
3.5 hours tonight, if you can believe it.
Well, we only recorded 2.5 of that, though.
I know, but yeah. So everybody, thanks again, and we'll see you next time right here on Ghostwood, the Twin Peaks podcast. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.